as I'm sure you're aware by now, if you've watched my channel for any length of time, Philip Fracassi is a must-buy author for me, and that only solidified after reading Don't Let Them Get You Down. It's his new book that's coming out from Zagava in limited and trade publication very soon-ish. I don't know. But I read an advanced review copy. It's amazing. 5 easy stars. Look for my review on the YouTubes. But I took it as an opportunity to get Philip on the channel to talk about Don't Let Them Get You Down, among other things, because the guy's got like just about a billion other things in the fire going on. I also took it as an opportunity to drink my last Jeff Word Stout. That was sitting there in my refrigerator making me sweat. So I took it out and let it sweat in a glass and then, drank it. So this is 2 hours. It's a lot of fun. It's always a great time having Philip on the channel. And I will also point out that this originally streamed live to the Jeff Word Facebook page. So everybody there was able to see it. So if you see the interview and you're wondering, who am I talking to? Apart from Philip, I'm reading comments that are coming in as we're chatting. So I like doing that. We're going to do that more. But if you're not a fan or a friend or a follower or some F on the Jeff Word Facebook page, get over there, and I will be streaming live to those Facebook pages because it's a lot of fun. I like getting comments thrown in there so I can respond to them. Anyway, check it out. Philip Fracassi's got a lot going on, and I think you should be all part of it. It's amazing writing. It's seriously amazing. So check it out.
For once, I'm not talking to myself. It's time to go beyond the book and get over your shelf. All right, we're good. We're good. Hey, everybody. I am here talking to Philip Fracassi. You may have heard about him once or twice before on my channel. I don't know. Maybe not. Mitch and Hans are here. Tim's here. So they're antsy. They're antsy. And I'm like, okay, fine. I'll let them crash the party. I'll let them in.
It was my fault. It was my fault.
Oh, yes, totally.
I was having mic issues.
I like to let people take blame. It's a rare thing. So yes, I neglected to have the green screen up, but the green screen just sort of eats my head and it just feels like I'm in a bad 80s video.
It does. Yeah, it does weird things. I've done it. Yeah. Sometimes you just disappear completely and you'll see like a hand floating.
Yeah.
In the ether.
So, but these are 2 books I'm assuming we are going to talk about. I just finished Don't Let Them Get You Down. Holy shit. That book. Wow. I did a review for it and you should have seen me record the review. I'm sitting there and I have the camera set up.
Yeah.
And I'm doing this review for it. And there was like, I was talking and my wife was in the other room. Producer Joe was in there. And then I went totally silent and I was quiet for like a minute and she poked her head and she goes, are you okay? I'm like, yeah. I'm just trying to formulate my next thought. Like it's really hard to unpack this book in a way that genre readers or fiction readers will sort of get like it, and I just was like, I was taking my time, I was collecting my thoughts because I wanted to get it just right. And of course I never did. I have it recorded. I'm going to edit it and it's going to be a nightmare to edit because I'm sitting there just trying to put it into words, but yeah, it was amazing. 5 easy stars for me, 5 total stars. I don't give 5 stars all that much. I think a book has to reach a level where I think it can't be improved upon. And I think that's this book.
Well, thank you. It's a tight story for sure. But yeah, and it's like I think I mentioned it before publicly. It's a very personal story. Not that it's true necessarily, but a lot of the things that a lot of the emotional stuff, a lot of the thoughts and thought processes that the protagonist goes through are things that I went through and had to, deal with. And so it wasn't, in that sense, it was not a reach for me to write about this guy. But I just wanted to, it's one of those, it's not really plot driven. It's not genre, obviously. It's really just like a snapshot of this guy. And you nailed it during your Monday night chat, where you talked about how it's, a lot of people write about depression and a lot of people write about being depressed and about tragedy. And what I wanted to do was tell a story about a guy who was kind of just coming out of the worst of that. And now that he was stable, quote unquote, he had now to figure out how to rejoin normal society, and which people don't really talk a lot about. It's like, well, you're not depressed anymore. Great. Get back out there and get a job, get back out there and date and go out with the guys and have have fun. And obviously those things don't go well for him because as bad as he wants to be normal, quote, as bad as he wants to feel that way, it's very frustrating to him because he doesn't understand. He can't comprehend normalcy. He can't comprehend happiness. He can't, like, it's not even an option in his mind. So that's why I really wanted to focus on that. I wanted to talk very specifically about, okay, now this guy's, he's come out of his major clinical depression. He's on medication. He's seeing a therapist. He's gotten over the brunt of the loss of his wife, which is not a spoiler. And now he's got to get back into the swing of things. And that's really what is difficult for a lot of people who go through this kind of stuff.
Oh my God. Well, real quick, I'm glad you said it's not a spoiler, because we do have to be very careful about spoiling the book, because it's not out yet. There's only like 20 copies left or so from Zagaba. But yeah, I think you nailed it. It's amazing. And I wish I didn't understand the book as well as I did. I really did. I wish I could say, wow, that must suck to go through that. But the idea that what I think when people go through these things that other people don't understand is that you are now trapped in yourself. Your body, your brain is a prison. And like when I'm in the middle of something big and I'm around people, I'm still completely alone. Like those people are there, but you think these people cannot reach into my head and fix what's broken. They can't. Nobody can help me. And that thought is sort of a deadly one. But yes, I
mean, this isn't a spoiler either. I mean, but there are characters in the book that are, all inside of his head too. So, and to your point about being alone, and he almost has to have this, he almost has to go through this trial with himself in order to, at least attempt to get back to where, to base level, as it were. And it gets, there's, and a lot of the extreme things that happen to him, both psychologically and in real, and physically in real life, as it were, outside of his head, they seem, oh, come on, they seem crazy, but I'm here to tell you they're not. It's no. People do they go places that are very dark, and they get irrational, and they start seeing answers in places where there are no answers. And I kind of turned it up to 11 a little bit as far as the experiences that he had, trying to come back, dating a girl. He dates a girl in the book, that becomes difficult. He tries to make friends with other guys. And again, it doesn't, he can't sync it with his reality. And I think part of what I also wanted to get across in the book is that it's, I think if you were reading it, you'd be like, oh, come on, that's, not everyone has that experience sometimes. And I think that's part of it too, is that, he's kind of put in these high stress situations when he's already sort of on the edge. And I thought that was it, but I think that's it's sort of like a B story of anxiety, which is, a lot of people, even if they're, psychologically somewhat level, have social anxiety or have trouble going, doing those kind of
Yeah.
things. And those weird experiences happen, and they can jar you and they can throw you into a tailspin. So yeah, and I think obviously, I think, like I said, I think I mentioned it on one of your posts, but I think that book, I think the book works as sort of a whole. I think when you finish the book and you kind of now know the whole experience, I think it is when at least for me, I think it makes the most sense. I think as you're going through it, it's just like, what's happening? I don't, this is kind of crazy, and it's kind of sad, and it's kind of awful. But I think when you get to the end of his journey and you kind of look back to the whole thing, I feel like that's when you really get the full impact of his story.
Yeah, I had that in mind when I finished it, because I was in midstream when I made the post, and you said, it's the whole work that sort of makes it make sense. But I think what I got out of it, I got out of it all the way through. I think that for me, obviously it was some extreme circumstances, yeah. But it was never handled in sort of a trite, self-pitying way. It was very real. Like, I'd imagine somebody who never had to deal with these things would try to write a book about what you think it must be like to go through these. And it would just be like the biggest pity party in the world. Oh, right. I'm so sad, I can't get up. Or, you know what? I just need to take a walk. No, that's not it.
Yeah.
That's
go exercise. Yeah.
Right. And so for me, that was the best part of it. And while some of these experiences are extreme, and I think there will be a lot of people who take away, like, obviously it's a book, so you have to have things happen in the book,
Right.
You have to have a situation that is a little bit larger than life, but how the character reacts and how it all comes through. And I will say, I think it has some really beautiful writing in here. Like, your other books are very well written, Philip, don't get me wrong. Gothic is a load of fun. Boys in the Valley is creepy and deep. But this, I would say, is the most beautiful and the darkest, because it's the realest, in my opinion. But yes, Tim said, so we should read the whole thing. Yes, this is not a DNF. Even if, like me, like I said, I had a tiptoe. Tiptoe. Like, I'm going into this book, I'm like, gonna give Peter a little rest here for a little while. We're gonna take 5, and 5 turned into 50. And then I went back to it, and I'm like, yeah, this is because when I start feeling panic attack symptoms, I back away. Like, my hands get cold. I'm just like, okay, we're gonna take a break for a minute. But but there's no doubt in my mind I had to read it, and I'm so glad I did. It's just a great book. And like all great books, I'm actually going to send this off to someone who I think can appreciate it. So I'm sending this off to someone else, because I think that's the kind of book it feels to me to be. Like, if you felt a certain way, and somebody who felt a certain way, this is the kind of book you want to share with that person.
Yeah, I can see that. I think, better to send that copy than the Zagava copy.
No, that ain't going anywhere. Yeah, no, that
one's a little more pricey.
Trust me, this is a hard one for me to let go of. Like, I like my, you saw what I did to the Boys in the Valley arc, but I usually treat my arcs like liquid gold. I don't know. Well, speaking of liquid gold, the whole reason I had this meeting, you're just an excuse for me to drink my last Jeff Word Stout.
Right. And I also have a Rapture Jeff Word Stout.
Look at that.
It's so cold. Look at it's dripping. And then I also have my I don't have a Jeff Word glass.
Oh, why
But
not? We got to
I
get
I
you
got a
one.
mug. But that's not mug, and this isn't. But I do my it glass.
That's awesome.
So
you'll float too.
I'll
That's
float
good.
too. All right, so
And
I'm gonna,
I did note Mitch
I'm
Hull
gonna open.
did his ale. He did his ale feature. What the ale with Tulsa World, and he was wearing a jersey that some might think was for the Pittsburgh Pirates, but I think it
Yeah.
was a P for Philip there.
That's what I assumed. I don't. Yeah, that was my initial.
Those who know.
Okay.
Oh yeah. What are we
Oh
drinking?
yeah, all over the desk. That's perfect.
We're drinking a Jeff Word Stout, Hans. Hans is going to
Hold
judge
on,
my pour.
I gotta get paper towels. You guys.
You go for it. We're already having drinking accidents. That we were late, so feel free to continue to blame him. It wasn't for the Pittsburgh. Oh, the Pittsburgh Phillips. That
I wish
you guys could see that. Can you hear me okay? I put my headphones.
Yeah, for a second I thought you cut out, but
I think it wasn't. I wish you could see that. There's just my writing desk right now.
Yeah, mine too.
Hey, listen, that's what's happening, and I'm not gonna
that's
fight
how
it.
well that's how desks become possessed and become cursed objects.
This desk has said, "Cheers, buddy. Cheers."
Oh, cheers.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Oh yeah, thanks for being here.
Mm,
Oh man,
that's beautiful.
that is something. Little commercial for Rapture.
I didn't go all the way downstairs for the paper towel. I just grabbed my son's baby blanket.
Oh yeah, baby blankets.
It was hanging on the wall with a sign saying Dominic's first blanket. I just ripped it right off. And
I was gonna use my son's christening outfit.
Yeah,
pick up some
it was
cat
between
crap,
that and my wedding vest. I was gonna grab one of the two, I think, to wipe up the slop.
Well, use the cummerbund. I mean, what do you use them for anyway? It's just like, what is a male corset? What is that cummerbund?
I never understood the cummerbund.
I never understood anything other than t-shirt and jeans.
Yeah, you want me or not? Let's go.
Yeah, right.
Enough of this fancy schmancy.
I'm not going to dress it up for one day and make false promises. Gothic,
tuxedos
yes, gothic.
Tuxedos are expensive. Yeah, gothic.
One of 10 arcs, I was told by the Paul Miller. So this didn't go to the deep. Yeah. So that's what he told me anyway. But
Yeah, I have a few coming from Cemetery Dance. Not a lot. They did a limited run for me, which I thought was very nice, per request. They weren't going to do any print arcs, and I asked if I could have a small amount, so I'll have a small amount.
Yeah.
So they'll have some.
Yeah, that's so how is it selling for them? Have they updated? Because they just have on their website hot. It's hot. That's all.
Right. I don't really get sales updates, but I think the first day when I first announced it on social media, I think it sold over 100 copies that first day. So
it'd be a lot more than that, Philip. We've been pushing that book. Should be a lot more than that. But well, I didn't buy it the first day. So my strategy was wait a couple of days. And if the sales started lagging, then I threw in another sale. See, so I was trying to buoy the balloon.
Yeah. But I think a few people are waiting for the
VJ
or going with the VJ signed edition, which will be happening, I think. And then I think that some people are just kind of, it's waiting until it comes out. It's not going to be out until next February. So there's time.
Yeah.
But and I just announced, you saw it, I'm sure, on we sold the audio rights, which is great. So there'll be an audio book.
Do you know you don't have any other detail? Like you don't know who's going to be reading?
No, not yet. I'm sure, no, they're going to, the way it will work is they'll send me probably a handful of options and I will listen to and they would typically, these narrators will do like a they'll read like a paragraph, and they'll send me the files, and I'll listen to them, and I'll give them who I would vote, who my vote is, and then I think ultimately they make the choice. But I do have some say, but I don't. But I from their pool of whoever they choose, I did, and I filled out. I had not done this before. I filled out like a little questionnaire as to what kind of voice I thought, based on different characters. And it's kind of a weird book because there's a character who is in his late 50s, who's a male, with an American accent, and then there's like a younger woman who's probably in her 20s who has a French accent and is French or whatever. And then there's there's like a young black detective guy, so he might have a different voice. And then his wife, who's old, or partner, who's older woman, and then his daughter, who's a younger woman. So it's a lot of range. I'm kind of interested to see how the narrator does with all that, because sometimes when you hear male narrators doing women, it can sound a little silly, and sometimes when you hear vice versa, it can also sound a little silly. So hopefully there's somebody who can find a nice balance to be able to get all that, because Tyson is kind of the main voice, obviously, but yeah, so we'll see. I'm curious to see how they do it.
So you can't get them, can you just get them to do snippets of each character then? Like, just go through a little scene here, because that would be a rough, like you might get the perfect narration and the perfect person for Tyson, but
yeah, well, that's actually interesting, because I did this before, and I was listening to the sample, and they were kind of talking, and I think it was a woman, and she was talking in her normal voice and doing the narration, and then as I was listening, I was like, oh, this is actually really good. I like the way she sounds. And then she jumped into some male dialogue, and it was really it was over the top. She kind of like, she was just kind of talking normal, then she was like, and I'll tell you something, mister. I was like, that's I can't do it. So I go with somebody else. But so hopefully you can. It's a hard job, man. It's a hard gig.
Oh, it's tough. You got to hear for what you think they can pull off too. Like, this is how they read without any direction, and then with a little direction, with a couple of notes, maybe they can bring it around to something that doesn't sound like Oscar the Grouch.
Right. Yeah. I think you like to think so. So, man, that is delicious stout.
It's distracting, is what it is, because
it is distracting. It's got I think there's some I don't want to say. I think there's some am I catching vanilla in there? Am I catching?
No, you're getting coffee and vanilla in there.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Coffee and vanilla.
Yeah, no, it's and Mitch earlier in the stream said we are the last two people to enjoy the Jeff Word Stout, so we could say it's the final word.
Oh.
Vanilla and coffee, yeah.
What, they're discontinuing it? Is that?
Oh yeah, it's bad to be linked to my channel, so it's
especially
devastating.
since the copyrights,
those copyright things, and plus, I keep calling my one buddy, and I keep telling him that thank God the cell phone wasn't invented till or the smartphone didn't come around until 2007. So had we had cameras at the ready for every stupid little thing we did, that wouldn't be.
No, I feel bad for the kids growing up with the cameras and the
can't get away with anything.
No,
everybody's got Ring cameras.
You're just doing dumb stuff. I mean, it's just I know I would have been doing some very dumb things as a child, as a young adult.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't be good.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, see, Mitch admitted it's the worst selling beer of all time, not just for his brewery or his business, but like according to all the books, almost caused us to go under. It was it's a tremendous amount of resources went into the beer, no demand, except for like me. I just kept ordering it.
I ordered at least two of them. I think 2 or 3. I can't remember.
I can't stop ordering them, and then I got the final one, this one. So
and I think I have some Pleasure Garden on the way.
Oh yeah, we do the pills. The Pilsner. Yeah, that's coming.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm looking forward to the Pleasure Garden. Yeah.
Yeah. So So yeah, crap. I just
So
keep
did
buying
we?
anthologies. I never buy anthologies ever. I don't like anthologies, but
Right.
I have Hybrid, 13 Haunted Houses, Revelations,
Yeah.
Humans Are the Problem. I mean,
Yeah.
how did that happen, Philip?
Yeah. And there's New Maps of Dream you don't have, or the Bad Book. Yeah. It's the story thing has been taking off a little bit for me, which is ironically um when I have the least amount of time in a sense to work on them, because I'm now behind on other projects with, like, I have to write a novel for Nightfire, and I have to
Brothers.
write a script. Yeah, I have to write Brothers for Nightfire, and I have to write a screenplay for that's being based on one of my stories. So I don't have a ton of time to write short stories, but I'm getting a lot of requests for them. So which is great, and I'm very appreciative of it. Um yeah, and I think I think I have like 3 coming out in October.
You got
I'm in
Shakespeare
3
Unleashed.
Yeah, Shakespeare Unleashed, the Flame Tree Press one, Midnight something. Um, oh, I can actually look at my
And then you're
website,
just
which
going to
has,
gather all these and it's going to be in one nice volume.
yeah. So I'm talking to a publisher right now about a 3rd story collection. Uh, so yeah, so in October I have, okay, so Shakespeare Unleashed is coming out next April, but then I have Dark Murmurs, which is coming out I think in September. I'm in Inner Zone Magazine, which is coming out in October. Damnation Games is an anthology coming out in October, and Close to Midnight is coming out in October. So there's a lot of books coming with my stories in them. And yeah, but so yeah, I'm just in discussions right now. Haven't finalized it yet, but for a 3rd story collection.
Now, how does that work for you? How do you know an idea is a short story and not a novel, and vice versa? Like, when, because how do you know that? Is it like, oh, that's too small of an idea, or let's just see where this goes, and oh, it only turned into 9,000 words?
Um, I have a weird sort of sense of how, not only whether a story is a story, short story, a novella, or a novel. I have a weird sense of how many words a story will be before I start it. I don't know how I, gained this superpower, but for whatever reason, I can just kind of tell. I think of an idea and I'm like, yeah, that's a 5,000 word story, or that's a 2,500 word story, or that's going to be a 10,000 word story, or, and I'm not always right. Sometimes I can go longer than I anticipated. The story will kind of take off on me. But yeah, but I always know going in. I did write a novella. Well, I did write a novella, which was Gothic, and and my agent asked me to expand it into a novel. So which I enjoyed doing, and I was actually already thinking, but I think maybe I talked about this.
You,
I can't remember if it was you. You and I talked about this before.
I remember you talking about it, how you embellished, you expanded the backstory of the history of the desk, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And it seems so natural in the book that, oh, I could see how these two things are about to collide, and it gives that sort of it gives that crucial pivot point in the book to have that sort of happen.
Right.
And I imagine that maybe in the novella that she sort of came out of nowhere in the novella.
In the novella, she sort of came out of nowhere. Yeah. And so she was sort of teased, and then she sort of came out of nowhere. And but that was a 44,000 words and change. So it wasn't like it was a 20,000 word novella that became an 80,000 word book. I just kind of built it. And there's more things I wanted to do with Tyson as well. Some of the scenes that are in the book with him were not in the novella. So a lot of the fun stuff that he goes through was not in the original story. So like the restaurant scene with the baby, or the scene with the taxi cab, or a couple scenes with him and his daughter, and also the daughter's storyline got more expansive. So she got more to do, which I liked. I liked her having sort of her own arc in a way. as a sort of like B character. But so yeah, so there are a lot of things that I kind of got to flesh out, which I enjoy doing. But yeah, typically I go into these things knowing what I'm writing. I don't start a novel, for instance, unless I've outlined the whole thing from beginning to end, which is very much the antithesis of how guys like Josh Malerman or Stephen Graham Jones do it. But I'm more of an outliner. I like to know where I'm going. But with a short story, I'll just have like a general idea of what happens, and I'll just kind of go and let it sort of take its course. And novellas that kind of are really just short stories that get away from me. I mean, I think like Commodore is 20, I think it's like 24,000 words, and I was intending that to be a 10,000 word story. So it just grew as it went.
Could have easily been another 5,000-6,000 words. I mean, I think that there was a lot there that did pack a heavy punch, and that's why I was left feeling like I would love a Sabbath novel. I don't know. I mean, you got to do Brothers, but I did that, and I haven't read Soda Jerk yet, but definitely piqued my interest. What other Sabbath stories are there?
I don't, I there's stories that I reference taking place in Sabbath, but there aren't any stories that build on the Sabbath mythology, as it were. Which is what I would consider a Sabbath story. Like Marmalade, which is in the Bad Book, takes place in Sabbath, but I don't really consider it necessarily a Sabbath story because it doesn't add to the mythology. But so there's really only the two, Soda Jerk and Commodore, but there's several stories that take place in Sabbath. I have a novella I'm supposed to write for the guys who published Commodore, which I think would be another Sabbath story, which would be a novella. But I'm not going to be able to write that until next year because I've just got so much to do already. The rest of this year, I'm not going to have time to get to it. But that would be like another one. Here. But if you pick up the chapbook that I announced earlier this week with the Monster Harboring Monsters, the Lethe Press chapbook, there's an essay in the back of that chapbook. I'm assuming it's the back. There's an essay in that chapbook I wrote called "There's a Monster at the End of This Essay," and that essay goes into a lot of my thinking regarding Sabbath and the Sabbath tie-ins to date, and then the Sabbath stuff I'm thinking about doing. So I do go into that a little bit in that essay. So for those of you who want the nuts and screws on what I'm thinking Sabbath-wise, that essay has a lot in it.
Yeah, I have that coming too. Are you trying to create so many different little limited editions that there will never be a Fracassi completist? Because they have, at this point, somebody who's brand new and like, I've just discovered Philip Fracassi, they're screwed. They're screwed.
Yeah. No, you got to be in there from the get-go.
And the get-go was like 3 months ago, or a while ago, even further back.
Yeah, 2015.
Yeah. Shiloh is this big, beautiful limited edition. Abraxas did it, or whoever. And
Mount Abraxas. Yeah.
It's like, it's already, and then Boys in the Valley, man, that shot up in insane value. How many slipcases are left?
I think around 20. We kind of hit a wall around 75 or 80, and I think like everyone who wanted one got one. So I think it's the plan at this point. He's going to start making them. He's going to make 100, and I think when they are actually in people's hands and people are posting about them and showing them off a little bit, I think we will blow through whatever remains.
Yeah,
at that point.
So. I think
if not, I'll just buy them and hold on to them. Who knows? But yeah, I think we sold around 80 or so far, 80 or 85 maybe so far. So
that is damn good for just such a small little community, and getting word out to all those people to get it is pretty awesome. Especially, I don't think Paul Miller ever promoted it. No. And that would maybe knock that last 20 out, because the people who bought that book bought it probably via Earthling. And
yeah. So, what's funny though, you mentioned it about about, and obviously joking, but did you, plan on doing all these limited editions and everything? And it's the other thing that gets, the answer is no, of course. But the other thing that's strange is that, like, I'm in this kind of weird position where I have so much stuff coming out, and I think we've talked about this a little bit, but it's very uncomfortable for me because I don't like, I really don't like, as much as, contrary to all, things that people say, I really don't like talking about myself that much. And I don't really
Yeah.
like promoting my own stuff all the time. But I owe if, but I, but as a writer, you have to, because you're not only are you supporting yourself, but you're supporting the people who work so hard on publishing the book,
Yeah.
who believe in the book, who are, who are also, there's other people, hoping the book does well. So you have to do your part. And, but it's kind of weird how it all just, like, sort of happened. Like, it all just kind of came together in this strange way where I don't even know how it happened. Where, like I've got so much stuff coming out that it's almost a detriment. And like and like I mean, like, and stuff that hasn't even been announced yet, like the children's book that's going to be popping up in the next probably couple weeks, that I wrote, and the Thunderstorm book that's going to be announced any day. And and those are all happening, in the end of this year. And then all these anthologies that are coming out between now and the end of the year. And the fact that I have A Child Alone with Strangers coming out in September, and I have the Earthling book coming out in November, and I've got
Boys from Tornite
Boys
Fire.
coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I have Gothic coming out in February and Boys in June. So really, once I get to next July, things should slow down. But
Yeah. And I think it does suck to feel like you have to hustle.
and I also feel bad that people are spending so much money on, these books when,
all things considered,
people
I
have
mean,
paychecks, they have
yeah,
bills to pay.
yeah, things are rough. Things are definitely rough right now all around the world. I think I've seen a lot more sales posts in these groups I'm in than
Yeah,
search
I've noticed
posts.
that too.
Yeah, there's a lot of people looking to, so yeah, times are a little tight, but all the more reason to lose yourself in a good book, in my opinion. And yes, you can borrow books from the library, you can enjoy books. There's a lot of ways to get your fiction fix. But I know it's got to be weird to sit. I guess you have, except for this book, Don't Let Them Get You Down,
Which is also coming out at some
yeah,
point this
Zagava
year.
in like whenever.
I told you I was going to have an exclusive for. So Jonas told me earlier this week that he was going to be receiving the books in 2 weeks
Oh, that's awesome.
from the printer. Now, there are other things that I'm sure need to happen between him receiving the books and the books going out to everybody, but that he told me is okay to say. So they are close. They're they're not in the ether. They're actually printed. They're going to be shipped to him very soon. So that, and I don't know if that's including the numbered. The lettered. I'm assuming that's just the numbered editions, because the lettered has a really crazy slipcase.
It's cool.
With the bandages around it.
The gauze, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that also the lettered is die cut. I think the cover is die cut, and I don't think that's in the. So,
no.
And the other thing about that I was going to say is that book is coming. We touched on this on your Monday podcast. That book is actually going to come out in a trade paperback. So if you don't want to spend $50 or 50 euros or whatever, if you don't mind waiting another 6 months, I have no idea. There will eventually be a nice trade paperback from Zagava that will be coming out, which will be wide release.
That's nice. That's good. I'm glad to see that. To get a wider audience. That's cool. But yeah, I just think, like, it's a harder book for a big wide release, unless you're like Jonathan Franzen or you become an Oprah book club selection, like those sorts of things get literature read by more people. Like, and I always know I like a more literary book, but I never seek it out. It's a weird thing. I don't know if I would have read this book if it wasn't a Fracassi book. But then it's sort of like I came that way, and I don't know. But
Well,
I'm
you
so
you
glad I
said
did.
you said it you said it you said it a couple, I don't know, a couple months ago, probably on your podcast. You said there's writers that you trust, right? And I think
Yeah.
it's like, and like Josh's book, Josh's Ghoul in the Cave, which is insanity in a box, is is a wild book,
Yeah.
but you trust him as, and it's not genre, and it's not a thriller, but you trust him as a writer to go like, yeah, let's see what you're going to do, and he comes through, obviously. So I it's very obviously, it's very humbling for me to be someone that readers trust, and I try to always do my best, and I try to always come up with a story that is if nothing else, entertaining and somewhat, hopefully, emotionally impactful. But yeah, it's you also kind of try and do different things. Like I had this children's book coming out. I have
Mhm.
I did a book of poems.
Poetry.
I
Yeah.
And it's not all good. It's not all good. A lot of it could be really bad. I don't know. But I like stretching those muscles, and I like getting that stuff out there. And if people don't like it, it's no skin off my nose. I don't care. But I do like to get it out there, and I like to sort of. I think any artist likes to get their stuff into the world, so that people can consume it, artists or painters or musicians or whatever it is. So I do like to get stuff out there. I don't like to get a bunch of, I try very hard not to get anything subpar
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
Like I have a novel called Happy Holly that I really love, and it's a 100,000 word novel. And but I'm kind of like, I don't think I'm ever gonna. I think it's just gonna be between. I think I'm gonna keep that one in house. I think it's just gonna be my little book, because there's
Really?
just, yeah, and it's not that it's poorly written. I actually wrote it after. No, I'm sorry. I wrote it before I wrote Don't Let Them Get You Down. I wrote a book called The Egotist, and then I wrote Don't Let Them Get You Down, and then I wrote Happy Holly, and that's kind of my literary trifecta.
Hmm.
Because I didn't start writing genre until 2015. So those books were all written kind of more in the early aughts. And but Happy Holly is just like, it's kind of like about this actress, and she goes to Hollywood, and she gets in with the wrong people, and it's a very angry book. And so
You know,
I'm kind of thinking maybe I just kind of let that one be its own
you know,
thing.
I think though, in some ways, this is a very angry book too, in some very real ways. I mean, depression, they
Yeah.
say, I've heard this before. Depression is anger turned inward. I don't know if that's just a cute little bumper sticker, but but in some ways, like that's one way. I never experienced any of these feelings is in anger, and definitely Peter has some anger, but
He has some anger that kind of, to get back to our beginning of the conversation, uh, if I, and this is me saying something positive about my own writing, which is kind of gross, but what I was pleased with when I reread the book for the 100th time recently, before I sent it to Zagava, was I was very pleased with how repressed his anger is for a good chunk of the book, and he doesn't
yes.
even know he's really repressing it. And then when it does flower, um I hope that people will kind of be taken off guard by, and
Yeah.
just because it's very reactionary. But that's exactly to your point. You said it perfectly. Depression is anger turned inwards, and I think that's what he's realizes by the end of the book, which I won't get into, spoilers and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he kind of goes full. He kind
in
of
in
goes full
my
circle.
I in my book review, which I still have to edit and post, I do compare it to a fever breaking. Like there's an aspect of this book that is like a cleansing moment, and it's like that moment
Right.
when you're in bed, it's like 3 a.m, you've been fighting this fever for 4 days or whatever, and then that moment when your whole body's just awash, and
Yeah.
it's the battle's over, you're through the worst of it, um which is, well, yeah, not going to spoil anything, and but yes, it is very much a very cleansing thing. And I think for me, at least, there are some things about his therapy sessions that I know if I was a listener and I heard, oh, there are therapy sessions in a book, oh, forget it.
Yeah,
I feel
I know.
bad
Trust me.
saying that, but it's such a great book. And
Yeah,
it's not how I'm making it sound. It's not a drag. It's not some navel gazing, introspective, woe is me, trite YA book. It's definitely a book that really, man, it gets you deep in that human condition. And
yeah,
when your brain is weaponized against you, you can't win in a lot of ways. So anyway,
yeah, yeah. And actually, yeah, and early part of the reason the book is short, especially for me, is because I really didn't want it to be exactly what you said. I didn't want it to be navel gazing and just sort of a pity party for this guy. I
right.
really wanted to keep it moving and be like, okay, we got it, we got it, we got it. Now let's get to see what happens to this guy. And yeah, there's a lot of I mean, there's some wacky stuff that happens in that. To your point, there's some wacky. It's not just this guy going through a
Right.
hard time. There's some
Right.
really weird shit that happens in that book. So yeah, I hope people like it. I mean, I think it's gonna be either you. I mean, look, I think if I'm being completely honest, I think that book is probably geared toward men. I'm sorry to say that, but and I say that, and the reason I say that, as you give me that look, is because I think a lot of the problems that he has and a lot of the frustrations that he feels are very male
Well,
oriented.
it's
And that
it's
could be
interesting.
me. That could be me being overly sensitive because I don't want people to yell at me in the reviews. But
No,
I
well,
do
well,
think that there's the audience is not the gates are not wide open. The gates are sort of partially closed on that one.
if you look at the book, and this did strike me when I was reading it, women are totally responsible for Peter's emotional state.
Right.
I don't want to, and I hate saying this because then it does look like you're in the incel crowd and you're a woman hater or whatever.
That's
But
hey, listen, that's already been. If you look at my Goodreads page, that's already been established. So it's fine.
no, really.
Well established that I'm a
Oh my
woman hater,
God.
but that's okay. But
Well,
that's okay.
if you think about it
My
though,
wife
like
begs to differ.
his wife passing triggers this crisis. His therapist is a
Right.
female, um and she's trying to patch him up in this clinical way. And then like you said, you mentioned this earlier, there's the love interest, the girl. I'll just say the girl. I ain't gonna say love
Yeah.
interest, but there is someone else who represents. So there's the past, his wife, the present, his therapist, and his hopes for the future on another woman. So these women are sort of the backbone of his emotional state, and the
Yep.
men are the ones that are keep trying to drag him. It's an interesting dynamic, and I think I'll
Yeah.
leave it to the bigger brains to throw that literary filter on it and try to dissect it. I don't. So the reason I made that face when you said it's a book for men, I
Well, I
think
didn't say that. I said is I could geared toward
oh,
maybe soften it. Geared toward men.
yeah, I can understand that. It is. I
Right.
think.
I would actually be very curious to get a. I would love to for I would love for a woman to read it and tell me what they think. And I will say this: a very smart woman. I'm sorry to truncate your thought. A
No,
very
no.
smart woman read it. A therapist friend of mine, not the therapist in the book, a therapist friend of mine, read it and really early on. This was like after a first draft. This is many years ago. She was like, "You've got to publish this book. It's so important that you
Oh,
publish this book." And hearing that from a
wow.
professional therapist
Yeah.
was really was I don't want to say it was wonderful to hear, but it definitely made me feel like it inspired me to kind of keep that book alive enough to keep trying to find a home for it. I've been trying to publish this book for 10 years, and I
That's
think and it's not
crazy.
that, and I've sent it to a lot of publishers. I sent it to my agent. I sent it to a lot of different and presses, and it just never, and for whatever reason, it just never caught on with anybody. And and it wasn't until I sent it to Jonas at Zagava had emailed me and said, I would love to work with you. Do you have anything? It was much like Paul Miller at Earthlink did. He's like, I just want to work with you. What do you have? And I said, well, I said, I have this really horrible novella that is really dark. And I have this novel that I think is not genre. And it's just kind of like, it's just kind of this character study of depression. And he bought the novel immediately. He loved it. He did not buy the novella, but he bought the novel immediately. And the novella was a little too wasn't what he was going for. It was a little intense. So he bought the novel, and I was very thankful that he did, because I like the idea of that book coming out in a limited edition, at least initially, and the fact that it will be in a nice package and it'll be something that you can kind of have as a bit of a keepsake. I think it's the right vibe for that.
Oh,
book.
yes. And I hate to think of it that way. I really do, because I think when you say it's a book geared toward men, I can agree, because I think that men don't often allow themselves to be emotionally vulnerable. They don't allow themselves to say, I can experience these things. I think it's a big risk, but shit, man, I mean, it's war inside your head. It literally is.
And which is not the worst metaphor in the world,
No,
because that comes up in the book, and
Yeah.
it is he's battling himself, and he's battling these demons, and it's sad, man. It's really tragic, and it's kind of hard to quote unquote watch,
Yes.
read, but it's but I think it's important, I think it's important to give voice to these things, because and to give and to express these things to an audience, because it happens, it's very real, and what happens to him is very real, and what he hears and what he thinks are very, trust me, is very real. And anyone who's been in that situation or been in therapy, or gone into a nut house or any of those things like I have, these are very real things. And I just thought it was really important to show that side of humanity, and it's kind of, in its weird way, it's sort of a tragically beautiful side of humanity. And it's like what we're capable of, the depths that we have, that we can reach, whether positive and negative, and is really astounding, and it's for me fascinating. So that's definitely why I read that book. And I'll tell you something else about the book, which I don't know if this is interesting or not, but I dedicated the book. When people see it, they'll say it's dedicated to Jonah's sister. And Jonah was this guy I knew many, many years ago, and he read an early draft. So this is probably 2005, 2006, I think, right when the book was written. And he read the book, and he got very emotional. And his sister had killed herself, and sorry to go dark, we'll get light in a second, but the point being is that he was like, if you ever publish this book, promise me you'll dedicate it to my sister. And so that's what I did. But anyway,
did it help you writing this book? Did it feel good to write this book? Did you feel like you got something out?
I think by the time I wrote this book, I was already out. I think by the time I could write it in this way, I'd been through it, and I was much stronger coming out. I was coming out the other side, and I was in a position where I could write about it without going batshit for having to write about, rehashing all that stuff. So it was sort of a post, all that, period, I guess, of right when I finally wrote it. So I didn't really, I think what allowed me to write the book, and I think what I try to get across in the book, I probably don't do it well, but is the miracle of therapy, and how therapy gives you these amazing tools so that when you're suffering, there are things that you can say, or things that you can hear, things that you can practice and think that will help you find footing. One of the things in the book, which is taken pretty much verbatim from one of my therapy sessions, it's always something that I've held on to, is when the therapist tells Peter, just get to the next hour. Just don't think about your life as this 50 years of misery. Just get to the next minute, get to the next hour, get to the next day, and think about what you're going to do in the next hour to give yourself a little bit of satisfaction, or a little bit of happiness, or a little bit of joy, or a little bit of like, and that's something that, that kind of hour to hour, day to day thing was something that really got me through a lot of the more difficult times that I went through. And so I wanted to put that in there because I thought it was frankly good advice. And so I definitely wrote it from a bit of a bird's eye view. I was a bit detached from all that stuff when I actually wrote it. So but obviously I would say it was probably cathartic to kind of experience it from a place of safety, if you will.
Yeah.
Versus while you're in the muck, because when you're in the muck, you're not creating much, and you're certainly not creating anything that anybody wants to read, I don't think. So
what's interesting is what helped me the most when I read this, and what I thought was really great advice was quit assigning things to other people they're in you. It's in you. This anger is in you, this emotion's in you already.
yeah.
Don't give that to someone else. You need to deal with it in you, because once you let every external character in your life create your inner turmoil, you're just going to be bounced around like a ping pong ball. So
Right.
there was just that moment in the book. And so I do think,
which is advice he unfortunately doesn't.
Yes. Yeah.
Gee.
No, and it's
Yeah.
and that's one thing you really almost cannot blame. You can't blame him, because he's getting these external things, and then what she says is just yet another external thing.
Right.
It's like, you're telling me I shouldn't let other people control my inner dials, but you're trying to turn my inner dial here. And so I could see at that point you're so twisted and mixed up. You don't know what's a hand helping you up or shoving you down at that point. But it's a brilliant, it's a brilliant book. And I loved every minute of it, even though like I said, and knowing your wife created the cover.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And that when you're done with the book and you realize the author who wrote this book had his wife create the cover, it's like, damn, it almost becomes a gut punch.
Yeah. And I was very, surprised, and pleasantly so, that Jonas wanted to use the cover that she had created for his book, because that was something that she had done for me when I was kind of planning on self-publishing at one point. And when he bought the book, he said, "Do you have an idea for what you might want for the cover?" And I said, "Well, this is what we had." It doesn't seem very Zagava-y to me based on all the other books I've seen, but he was like, "I love it. This is great.
That's
perfect.
So cool.
I want it." Yeah, so I was really pleased that he did that. And it's always fun to do stuff with Stephanie, and she actually did the cover of my children's book as well. So that was neat.
Yeah.
So she's got that art thing, down. So
do you have anybody for this book yet?
No, man, I don't know what's going to happen with that book. So yes. Okay. So when I sold Boys in the Valley to Nightfire and eventually Orbit, they bought it as a 2-book deal. So I was like, that's great, because I have these 2 other books that are finished and they're great, and I'm really proud of them, and just pick, Miyagi, choose. And then my agent was like, and you know what? Let's just send them like a pitch. Let's just send them like just to have like one more option. Let's send
Yeah.
them something that's more like straight horror, just like a little. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I kind of came up with this idea in like 10 minutes and wrote it out. And then of course they came back and they're like, we love the pitch. We want the pitch. So so that's the book I have to write.
What about Subterranean Press? Why not get them to do it? They do sci-fi. I don't know.
I don't think they're. I don't. I think we've sent them. I don't think they're fans. I think. Well. Here. Well, I don't think anybody's watching this, right? So I can say that.
No. Nobody's here. Nobody's here.
I think I think the hope is that we can sell it to
A trade publisher.
a trade publisher that
Yeah.
we're already sort of working with. That's not
Oh,
Nightfire.
okay.
So so that's what I think what we're kind of like angling toward. I'm also hoping that same said publisher picks up Gothic for the UK. Oh, so we'll see. But I don't know. This is all just me wishing. This is all
Yeah,
I don't know.
I gotta
It all-
say, I was reading Don't Let Them Get You Down, and like it was one of the moments where I had to take a break. I'm not even kidding, man. Damn. But I opened up Observe and I read the first sentence and I was like just hooked in. I'm like, oh, this is cool. What the hell is going on? And I wanted to keep going. And I'm like, no, I got to read this first because then I have another book I need to read that I'm reading right now. And
so you didn't read Observe?
not yet, because
Okay.
I have an assignment. Like,
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
there's some books, and it's a shame because I'm reading a book by an author I like, but this book isn't hitting me in any sort of way. Like, I don't know. So whatever. I was
Jeff.
hooked.
It can't be 100. It can't be Fracassi all the time. Come on, you gotta.
Well, I gotta say, I mean, that's the one thing. Like with Josh Malerman, he writes a different book every time, and so far, Boys in the Valley, Gothic, Commodore, and Don't Let Them Get You Down, all very different books, and I like them all for very different reasons. I think what you do that works for me is you don't dumb it down, and I think you know how to write a good strong active sentence. I think I can't. I mean, that should be basic. That should be basic. But when I'm reading, like, for example, there's a book I'm reading that I see how I can make it better with a red pen by eliminating a lot of words. Like, I think if you try to overemphasize a point, you just think your audience is stupid and they didn't understand the consequences of how you worded it the first time. So it just gets so. But yes, I think that's key. You don't talk down to your audience. And
and I think a lot of that comes from reading a lot. You know, I think I'm a big reader, and I think when you read stuff and you have that sensation of like, okay, you know, let's keep it moving. I think when you're writing, that you have that same thought, which is like, the last thing I want to do is like bore anybody or get to it. I mean, that being said, sometimes I do, you know, I do write, you know, I'm like, there are moments where I'm writing where I'm almost like in my head saying, just relax. I'm going to get there. I just want to write this other thing first because it's something that's important to me and I want it to sound pretty. So I'm going to use a little bit of prose. So just hang on for a minute and I'm going to get there. But let me just have this. Let me just have this. Let me have this description that I want. And I do have that conversation a lot in my head when I'm writing. But most of the time when I'm writing, I'm like, okay, let's keep it going. And I think you said active sentence is a very good way to put it, because I do try and have very lively, active wording. I that's something I do consciously, which is I want it to be something that feels like you're experiencing something, that you're kind of along in this ride, that you're not just like a passive observer while I'm doing my thing. You know what I mean? I think that you were all in this together. We're all kind of going through it. And that's kind of something that I think about a lot when I work.
Well, I think you create a lot of immediacy. I remember this one passage in Don't Let Them Get You Down where two people are on an elevator and it said, and the mirrors like applauded. Like that little moment I thought was both beautiful, descriptive, and immediate. And I think it nailed everybody to that moment. And for me, reading that book, I know one moment to the next is not promised. So you might be okay right now, but man, there's something that's going to happen that's just so delicate. Your sanity. And that's the scary thing. When you think your sanity is a delicate body of thin ice, man, it just changes how you treat the world and how you treat yourself. But yeah, I think they're very different books, and I do trust a certain level of of authors, and it does break my heart when I'm like reading the book right now that it's just not. I want it to, but it's not, and it's kind of a bummer.
And that's kind of it's it's something that you worry about as a writer. You don't want to have any duds, but I think also you try your best, and it's out there, and some people are going to love it and some people aren't going to love it.
I mean, even Stephen King, you're right. What, 60 some 70 books, and I don't know how many he's written by now, but you're going to have a worst one out of that bunch. You're going to have one that people just didn't click with, and for
I've yet to get through Lisi's story, so
and you know what, I kind of liked it, but I couldn't stand Rose Madder, and the debate rages, right? There are a lot of people that
right, which is kind of the fun, and I don't mind putting a lot of stuff out there. I think about it sometimes as a band that puts out an album a year or two albums, and it's like they're gonna have some hits and they're gonna have some duds, and I don't want to have duds, but it's also me expressing myself. And I think and I think it's with like some of the stuff that's coming out, like so as of right now I have Don't Let Them Get You Down, and then I have this children's book coming out, and then I have A Child Alone with Strangers, which is coming out September 27th, and then I have Gothic coming out February 23, and then Boys of the Valley coming out July 23.
You have Gothic coming out November 1st.
Well, the Earthling comes out in November. That's sold out.
It's all sold out.
Yeah, but the trade edition comes out February. And I think all those books are very different. And I think part of the reason I write books that are different, and I think Josh, I don't want to speak for Josh, but I think he sort of feels the same way sometimes, is that I think you just you want to, you're writing for readers, but you're also writing for yourself.
Yeah.
And nobody wants this. I don't like the idea of being one of these guys. No offense to anyone. I don't like the idea of being one of these guys that cranks out like you get another thriller every year, or you get another mystery every year. That's not really what I'm into. It doesn't excite me. It doesn't even interest me. I like the idea of having a book every year. I like the idea of being paid for my writing, but I don't necessarily like the idea of just like, I'm just going to churn out stories for the sake of churning out stories because people are buying my books. And so here's another story that's just like the last story you read. It's not really interesting to me. I'd rather write something really unique that's very different than what you've read before, but hopefully as equally engaging and entertaining. But that's,
otherwise
I strive for anyway.
Right. I mean, the pay is one thing, but it's the art that's the other. But Stephen Dwayne Ellison Jr. made a point that I thought when I read Commodore, and I don't know why it struck me with Commodore more so than other books, but he said, when I read a Fracassi story or book, it feels very cinematic to me. I think that comes from your script writing background. And I think I mentioned that to you with Commodore, that there was the way it was written felt very much like there was a point where I think one of the boys, the main character, I don't remember his name, had his foot in the dirt. He's kicking off and he's going to cycle. And it felt very much like if you're doing a storyboard for a script and you're like, okay, this shot is going to be his foot in the dirt. He kicks up and he kicks very quick shot, but you want some dust, you want some gravel. And like that sort of thing works. And I think that's one reason why maybe Stephen King released Storm of the Century as a screenplay, because that sort of feels like those screen directions, that creates an immediacy. But I did think that
Yeah.
too. And do you think that your script writing background helped flavor your writing, your longer form?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's a chicken and egg thing. I think we talked about this at a previous interview,
Yeah.
but it's like, yeah, but I don't know, because frankly, I was a writer. I was a prose writer. I'm using the word prose loosely.
Yeah.
I was a fiction writer well before I was a screenwriter, and I came to screenwriting kind of, I wrote a few screenplays sort of in the early, right around the, like the early aughts, and I had a couple produced, and I'm writing a screenplay right now, and I do enjoy the art of writing a screenplay. I don't enjoy writing screenplays because I don't like people telling me what to do when it comes to something when it comes to something I'm writing. And that's what screenwriting is. You're definitely you're the low man on the totem pole, as it were, or woman or person. But I don't know. I think it's more about how I see the story in my head than it is about my experience writing screenplays. I think when I'm writing, I think I'm thinking in a very visual manner. So when I see something in my head, I write it. And I also think that to create visceral moments like that, like the foot in the dirt, or like a thumb in the mouth, or whatever it is, I think definitely brings you into it sucks you right into that moment of the story. There's that weird, speaking of thumbs in the mouth, there's that weird moment in Scorsese's, help me out, the De Niro movie with Juliette Lewis.
Cape Fear.
Cape Fear, which is obviously was a remake of of a novella by James McDonald. But but there's that weird scene in there where De Niro is with Juliette Lewis and after her class, and he sticks his thumb in her mouth, and it's like the most uncomfortable, unsettling. Nothing he could say is more like awful than that, because you're just like, that's so personal, and it's so physical, and it's so visceral, and that's a moment that's really stuck with me. And it's something, it's one of the things I do try and do in my fiction, which is I try and bring those moments to my work. And sometimes it works too well, and I get people angry, but sometimes where I'm not actually saying anything bad at all, but there's so much inference, and the physicality is so real that people get upset. And I do think that's something that I enjoy doing with the fiction, which is creating those kind of like little moments where I'm kind of like I'm kind of zooming in on what's happening, where it's like you think everything, you're watching, and then I'm gonna go, but look at this thing right here.
Yeah.
Like, that's really fucked up, right? And I can also go back out and we can continue. And I think that's something that I like to do, because I think it keeps people engaged, and I think it's also just keeps it's entertaining, and also connects you to the story more than if you were just kind of like laissez-faire reading it.
Yeah. And I think if you stir up an emotion, if you get people angry or happy or whatever it is, they've at least been touched by the work. They've at least experienced something. And I think a lot of that, like I said, it was uncomfortable for me to read some of that. Don't let them get you down.
There's some uncomfortable moments in that.
Yeah. And there are some things that I'm just like, I've got to give a break, but but that just means it's meaningful, like aren't people craving some meaning? If you're angry, that means you identify with some standpoint, some viewpoint that this gets you mad. So now you can at least kind of begin to understand yourself a little more, at the very least.
Yeah, I don't even mind, I don't even mind necessarily the angry reviews as much as I mind the reviewers who are like, meh,
yeah, I know. Yeah,
really
I can
take anything
imagine.
away from it. I can't really remember what happened in any of the stories, like whatever. And I'm just like, well, A, I'm glad I kept you entertained for a few hours, but B, I prefer for somebody to take something away from the stories. And I think with Don't Let Them Get You Down, I think Gothic, for example, is look, Gothic is pure entertainment. Gothic is Gothic was written like in a very cinematic style. It's meant to be fun. It's meant to be crazy. It's meant to make you laugh, and and it's supposed to be a good time. That's the whole point of Gothic.
Yeah.
Don't Let Them Get You Down is meant to sort of stick with you a little bit more and hopefully dig a little deeper. Boys in the Valley, I think, does a good job of sort of meshing the two. But it's also, to your point, it's a different kind of story. It's not
I hate to
it's
say,
not a madcap romp. It's a very personal.
Yeah.
I think the difference with Boys in the Valley is it's a very personal story, but not necessarily personal about you. It's more personal about these characters that I've created for you. Whereas Don't Let Them Get You Down is very personal, hopefully for the person who's reading it. And Gothic is more of a. I'm really excited. I'm sorry, and then we'll let you talk. I apologize. I'm really excited for you to read Child Alone with Strangers, because I think that'll be Child Alone with Strangers is, I think, a lot of fun, and I think it's.
I wanted to read it.
No, don't read that copy. I think it's that book. I think people will really have fun with. I think it's a very throwback, old school doorstop, horror novel, and but I think it's a great bridge to Gothic and Boys in the Valley for folks who haven't read anything that I've done. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you though. How are you doing on your stout? Where are you at stout wise?
Oh man, this is it. This is all I got left out of 32 ounces.
Okay, so we're pretty much the exact same, because my can's empty, Mitch.
Yeah, no, yeah, this can's gone.
That's a hint, Mitch.
Yeah, I know. Well, he said in a month or two he's going to be brewing another batch of Jeff Word Stout. I offered him the art, the logo for the channel, but he's like, no, I don't really want. I think he's afraid, but that's okay.
Right,
that's cool.
I think we're close enough.
Yeah,
right.
I think writing JWS on the can is all you're going to get. But Tim Martin said, should I eat popcorn while reading Gothic and bring tissues while reading Don't Let Them Get You Down? Now, I got to say, I wouldn't agree with the tissues thing with Don't Let Them Get You Down. I didn't feel like depression isn't about crying necessarily. At least
I bring
not
the
for
tissues.
Me.
I bring the tissues with Boys in the Valley.
I would too. Yes.
Don't Let Them Get You Down. Yeah.
But Don't Let Them Get You Down. I would bring whatever helps you breathe.
I bring some gummies.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Mellow gummies.
Some gummies. Or Jeff Word Stout or two, just to have. I said in my book review, it pairs well with scotch. Now I had some scotch. I can't find the brand. I wish I could find the brand. Somebody from where I used to work before I got kicked to the curb. They had we had a client in Scotland, Glasgow, and they came back and they brought some scotch, and I swear it started with the letter A, and it was like I made the joke.
Was it ambergris? Is that a scotch? Ambergris?
No, it was like the only one I could find that seemed similar was Arbor, something like that. But it was super peaty, and it was like leather and it was like tasting leather and smoke. I'm like, this is like licking Rob Halford's suit after Judas Priest concert. But it tasted delicious, and but I didn't have any, so I drank in my book review. I drank a Jack Daniel's single barrel.
Well, that's the weird thing with scotch is you can get scotch is a pretty wide range. I'm very much on the vanilla and caramel-y side versus the smoky.
So I was researching it actually, and you would be Speyside, that's the area of Scotland that does that, and I'm more Islay, Islay. I don't know how to say that word. Where it's very peaty.
Where does Jameson fit in? Jameson's sort of in the middle of it.
Jameson's Irish whiskey, so that's totally.
Oh, copy that. Yeah. So Irish whiskey. So I like. So I like Dewar's.
Okay.
And I like Glenlivet very much.
That's good. I like Laphroaig. There's a scotch called Laphroaig. I like that. It's very.
I've never had Laphroaig. I've I like some Johnny Walker. I don't like Johnny Walker Red. I do like Johnny Walker Reserve, which is a little sweeter. Johnny Walker Red and I occasionally like a Johnny Walker Black, which is double barreled. But I find Johnny Walker Red a little smoky. But there's some Scotch that's so smoky that that you drink it and you're just like belching smoke for the next 3 hours, and I'm not a
But
fan of that.
I don't know. So I can't really handle a lot of the more potent liquors, but when I drank that Scotch and it was like smoking leather, it was,
Yeah,
man, I don't know, it hit a sweet spot for me. And
yeah. I would love to
and
try it.
Mitch Hull said he's a spay man himself. So that's our expert in this area. And if he's saying Speyside, it's more citrusy, it's more fruity.
Yeah, there's a Glenmorangie, which I think that's a little too sweet for me. I like a monkey.
Interesting.
I like a monkey shoulder. That's a good Scott. That's a good brand that I like. Kind of a unique taste. Yeah.
Yeah, well, instead of the tissues, I would bring the Scotch. For me, the book was very cathartic. I dug it, man, and like I said, 5 stars. I try to go back and look at my Goodreads reviews, and I'm sure I've given 5 stars to books that weren't worthy in my new metric. We always got to update it. But definitely
I was very pleased that you give it 5 stars, because I know that you don't get 5 stars easily.
I don't.
So I
don't.
pleased.
I'm a bear. I'm really cruel.
Yeah, mountain lion. I forgot what I was gonna say.
But yeah, I just yeah, I hope you find a home for this. I'm dying to read it because that first sentence hooked me. And
the opening scene is I think is a nice hook. That's sci-fi. So that's science fiction. It's not really horror, although there are some horror elements in it. And then I have another novel called The Blue Butterfly, which is really a thriller, speculative thriller, but also has some horror elements in it. But they're not horror. I don't think it would be categorized as horror. I think that book would be categorized as sci-fi, and I think Blue Butterfly would be categorized as a thriller. But it's interesting. I sold some stories recently to Interzone magazine, and I'm working more closely with the new editor there, and we're talking about doing some things that both in the magazine and outside the magazine. And I kind of am interested now in exploring a little bit more of this dark sci-fi side of my brain. So I think I have a few books I want to write. I want to write Brothers, and then I want to write a book called The Chariot, which is sort of a crime horror hybrid.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of a bigger, I think it'll be kind of a bigger book, kind of in the vein of like Dan Schoen. If you've read any Dan Schoen, I think it'll end up being that vein. And then I would really like to get into writing some like more dark sci-fi. So I don't know if that's where I'm gonna. It may be where I just go with some shorter stuff, but I've been having a lot of fun with it. So I don't know. I might go that direction. But Nightfire wants horror, and Orbit wants horror. So. And they're the guys who are kind of paying the bills right now. So that might be, I might have to sort of stick with horror for a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, horror is such a vague term in my brain. Like
but for them, I think it's very specific. I think it's very down the middle.
I know when the people are cutting the checks, it's like, well, how do you define that? And I understand that. And sometimes it's good to give your muse a little bit of a point in one direction type of. Sometimes people need those limitations to sort of formulate a good idea, but Tim Martin asked me, do I like to cool off from a story before writing a review? No, not at all. I'd like to write the review as soon as possible because I don't want that feeling to evaporate. I don't want to go to a new book and then have it erode.
Yeah, especially if you're recording a review, I would think. I think when you're writing a review, it's different because you can probably you can take your time, reach back into some things, kind of. But I think for when you're like just like, I'm going to tell you about this book, I think you definitely would probably want to come right off of it because you want the emotional experience.
Hans Curtis wants you to write a splatter Western. Would you ever write a splatter? I don't even know what a splatter Western is.
Probably not.
Well,
I don't think so. I don't know if I'm a Western.
Shiloh is
Shadow's
Stephen.
not it's a Civil War story.
No,
It's,
I know, but we sort of lump,
historical.
I think the lazy American brain will lump Westerns into perhaps pre-Civil War. Of course, that would be about the time, and then
Well,
I don't know.
I don't know if I'm a splatter guy, and I don't know. And this is nothing against those writers because I think it's fantastic. I love it, and I like the splatter Western stuff to a degree. Ted Grau wrote a great splatter Western story in his first book, The Nameless Dark. But yeah, I don't think so. I think, you know, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I would love to write a. I would love to. I would love to write a. I would love to write a Sabbath novel, primarily because you told me to.
I just
but
think that King has Derry. He also has Castle Rock. He also has.
But Josh's Goblin. I don't know. I'm kind of like also.
I mean,
like,
there's just such an allure of a whole town that like I get the idea from Just Commodore that Sabbath is beholden to things like you could just imagine the first settlers are there and there's this oh shit moment and then well we serve something else.
I'm going prequel.
Yeah. And
well, I can tell you what the mythology of Sabbath is. I can tell you the mythology of Sabbath. The mythology of Sabbath is that these townspeople in the mid-century are basically custodians of these gods that live in this town, and they're custodians by choice. And so so it's not like a slave thing. The milkshake, the drinking of the milkshake is a kind of rite of passage,
right?
That it expands your mind enough so that you can actually understand these beings that you are being asked to protect.
That's so cool.
But outsiders come in and sometimes the locals don't want to play ball. And sometimes the outsiders come in and they stay longer than they should. So those are kind of the things I'm basing a lot of the future stories about. But there's a movie theater run by this former German, I think I mentioned this last time, German army, military guy, and when you watch the movies, it drives you insane. There's different things that are going to happen in Sabbath, and again, I allude to a few of these things. Actually, I think I actually allude to a few of these things in the back of Commodore as well. So if I'm not mistaken, right? I think there's an afterword in Commodore.
Yeah, there is,
where I talk about some of the other Sabbath ideas I have. So
yeah, that's what got me pumped for more Sabbath.
Yeah, I would love to write more Sabbath. I want to write this chariot story that's been in my head for a very long time. And it's a detective story. It's about a detective who's a drug addict who's kind of harassed by the ghost of his wife. And
that's cool.
And he has to solve this sort of like double murder. And there's like mediums involved and there's an afterlife, angle, but it's a lot of fun. I think
and that's chariot.
That's the chariot. Yeah. Which is based on the tarot card of the same.
Chariot /
chariot gear, depending on how you're looking at what deck you're using. So there's other things there's a lot of things I want to write, but I don't, like I said before, I don't really want to get into look, this is going to sound very elitist. I apologize. I don't mean it to sound that way, but I would like to try and write things that have a little staying power, that maybe get picked up in 50 years and reread. And I know that's a very egotistical thing to think and say, but it's just sort of what I aim for. And I'll tell you where I get that from. When I owned a bookstore in Venice Beach, I learned of so many writers that I had never knew about because I was buying used copies of their books that had come out in the 1940s, 50s, and reading them for the first time. Example, John Fonte. An example, Charles Bukowski. An example, John Hersey. An example, the guy who wrote Butterfield 8. That was also John Hersey, I think. And no, that was John O'Hara. John O'Hara, who wrote Butterfield 8, which is amazing. And I love the idea of somebody re-experiencing something that I wrote 50 years from now, maybe on a whim or maybe on a chance, but reading it and maybe getting something out of it, and kind of getting that rush of like the rush you get when you read somebody you've never heard of, and you get that experience of like, this is really cool, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's sort of something I shoot for. It's sort of something I shoot for. I don't think I always hit it, but that's why I kind of don't want to do like the, no offense to Riley Sager, no offense to all these thriller writers, but I kind of don't. It doesn't interest me to just be like, here's like I said before, here's the next thriller, here's number 15,
Yeah, yeah,
here's number
yeah.
15 in this series of whatever detective. It's not something I want to do with what's left of my time here on Earth. I'd rather do something interesting and hope that people connect with it.
I think,
For better or worse.
it's interesting. It's an interesting lens through which to put your work. I think that's commendable, and I think it is something worthy of committing to paper and ink and books and binding them, because I look at my books, I'm like, these are all
Right.
hardbound. Why am I buying hardbound books? Like, I could get these from the library, I can read them. Am I reading them again? Maybe I am. In some cases, yes, many times. But yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting, and I think,
Well, that's the reason, to your point. That's the reason I think you guys like you and I buy the Sunked Up editions and buy
yes,
these,
yes.
right? $100 books that,
Oh my
that we
gosh,
could buy in paperback for $10 because we like the idea of them having longevity. We like the idea of
right?
them being on the shelf for a long time, for a long time. I love the idea of handing down my collection to my son, and that's kind of what I like. I like the idea of them of a longer presence, and with certain books. And so I think that's an aspiration, is to be in that world, in that realm of like where somebody would want to have a copy of your book that would be something that would be almost be, like I said earlier, like a keepsake. And I think that's kind of why maybe you're adjusting, but I think that's kind of why maybe I like doing these like limited editions, because I like the
Right.
idea of having a beautiful copy of one of my books that will be scattered to the earth, and but maybe some guy will be digging, looking for water, and he'll find the mountain of Praxis, Shiloh.
While I
And
die of thirst, I might as well read this book. Oh, this is
might as well
great.
read. Right. Yeah, but I would like to think that he survives. But yes, but if he dies, of thirst, he has something good to read. Which reminds me, if you ever read, there's a Paul Bowles story that takes place. What was the name of that story? I'll tell you later when we're off camera. You have to read this story. I read it recently, and I read a lot of Paul Bowles, but I never read this particular short story. And it's about these guys in the desert, and it deeply, deeply scarred me.
Wow. Yeah, I think
So maybe when we do when you archive this, maybe we can put in the comments what the story is, because I can't remember off the top of my head, and I'm not
that's
going to go
fine.
looking.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not
No,
going to
I'm
go
gonna
rustling through my book collection.
post this to YouTube later.
So check this out. So this is my 8 glass, right? Now empty, which means I beat you. And then look at the
did.
bottom.
Oh wow, that's cool. Where'd you get that
Empty.
glass?
I got this glass at Alamo Draft House at the premiere of It 2.
Oh,
But I call
wow.
It 2 the unfortunate movie.
Wow.
Because I didn't like it very much.
A lot of
But I
people
loved the
didn't.
first one.
I liked it.
I liked it. I think my problem with It 2 was that it was the kids. First of all, they added a whole line of kind of characterization to the kids that wasn't in the first movie, and I kind of felt like it was reaching. I felt like it was convenient. It was an act of convenience versus an act of inspiration, where they're like, oh, all of a sudden now they have to find these objects. Like that's like this thing.
Okay.
That's like this thing that they had where they all put it. Like that was even
Yeah.
if it was in the first movie and they carried it through, I would have been more on board. But they just kind of created it, and then all the kids were like digitally enhanced to look younger because they were all like 5 years older at that point.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know. I like all the adult stuff. I liked all the adult stuff. I didn't like the kid flashbacks. I felt it took me out of the movie.
I just wanted to root so hard for a Stephen King movie. that perhaps I just was like,
And
no,
Bill
you know what?
Hader, come on, Bill Hader.
I'll just overlook things.
Right.
Because
Right,
I
right, right.
loved the first one so much.
First one is great. It was a classic.
Yeah.
Classic.
I thought this is
Yeah. I wish they had just focused on the adults for the second one and not try to tie in the kids again. I think that would have been I think that would have been the right move. And you
yeah,
could have little flashbacks, but not like a whole nother thing. Like they did a whole
right,
nother thing.
right.
And the
It was
objects, the finding the object, it wasn't even in the book, was it? Was
yeah,
it?
I know that
I don't think
whole
so.
was it like a Native American sort of
Well, that was in the
vision
book.
quest thing? Was it? No. Oh,
Oh,
wait,
no, I'm talking about the whole rite of something that
the
comments
Rite
they
of
would
Chud. Well,
rite of
they had
Chud.
to
That was
change
in the
it.
book. But the
They had
whole
to
like
change it because it was different in the book.
right.
A little different.
Johnny had a shower cap, so we got to find the shower cap, and Billy had the
Yeah.
whatever. I don't know. That was weird.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's always hard to make that leap.
Sequels aren't easy.
Yeah, and making the leap from fiction or from the written word to the
Right, but I thought he did a good job. I thought he did a good job with the first one. Eddie
first
Machete.
one. I was so relieved and I loved it. But yes, and I think it's funny because when you look at the old miniseries with Tim Curry, it was
Sure.
so good when it first aired. But then when you look back at it now, you're like, oh my gosh.
I remember when I was 25 years old and watching that for the first time. When I wasn't 25, I was 15. When the spider at the end.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, what is happening? I was like, my mind blown. I was so scared.
Yeah.
And yeah, now you look back at it and it's a sad thing.
It is.
It just makes you sad.
We all had we at that level, we all had our tolerance for fiction at a set level. And since technology is advanced, our tolerance for imagery has only gone up. So now we have higher standards. But
yeah, we do.
Anyway, I've had you here for an hour and a half, and I'm out of beer, which is a little scary. I had 32 solid ounces. I'm not going to cry over this book, but I recommend everybody to get it, even though I imagine you've already been paid for the limited edition, right? At that point, does it matter?
There was a lump up front payment. Yeah.
So right now it's just a moral victory if it sells out.
I just wanted the publisher to do well with it.
Oh, of course.
And I want people to read it. So I'm always pimping, but yeah, it's not like I get any more or less money for each book that's sold. Unlike my other books, which I definitely get paid for books sold. So yeah.
I'm gonna have to get the trade edition. I didn't even recall that there was going to be a trade paperback.
I don't think he announced it because he wants people to buy the number, and the only reason I'm saying it now is because I think the lettered and the numbered are both pretty much sold out. So
I might still get that lettered. I might still get it. I don't know.
I think there's only a few.
There's only a few, and it's worth it.
He's got that low
stock alert. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that means, but yeah, and I think and I would love to do I've Child coming out, and and I would love to do something cool with Child Alone with Strangers, maybe like in the limited deluxe model. I would love to do I mean Paul Miller at Earthling has already done an amazing job with Boys in the Valley and with Gothic, so I think those are probably what they're going to be as it pertains to limited editions. But I would love to do something for Child Alone with Strangers, but I can't do anything for a year post release because contractually
with the trade publisher,
the trade edition has to be out for a year before I can do any sort of deluxe edition. But
you could get it in the works now, publisher.
That's the hope.
Yeah.
I'm talking to a couple publishers about
that. Would be cool. I'd like to finally read it. And then, of course, I'm going to go back and read the arc and say, what did he change?
No, so the arc, a lot of folks have read the arc, and I appreciate it very much, and giving me like corrections and feedback and stuff like that. But yeah, no, a lot of what happened with, and the reason I'm telling you not to read the arc is because a lot of what I fixed with between the arc and the actual print edition is I fixed a lot of timeline issues, and I fixed a lot of technical issues, medically technical, legally technical, very technical stuff. So I feel like I have more confidence in the final trade edition of that book than I do in the arc, which has some errors. And I was embarrassed by a couple of them.
Really? You know what?
I don't think anybody
I'm
noticed.
not that astute, though. I'm not that astute.
No, I don't think nobody who read I don't think anybody who read that early arc actually mentioned the errors that I fixed. But there's some timeline gaffes and stuff like that. So I think it's just better to read the premiere edition.
Well, Mitch Hull says the arc doesn't have the Rapture reference, and so that's the biggest
No, that's
change.
true.
So
That's true.
yeah, the Rapture, that's, the Pilsner was a key part of the story, from what I understand.
Yeah, there's a scene where one of the bad guys, product placement would not have worked out if this were a movie, where one of the bad guys is trying to figure out what to drink in a empty bar that he has full access to. And I think he goes with a Rapture Spaten, I believe.
Yeah, he's
Saison. Maybe a Saison. Mitch might know.
Is it Peter Cecil Saison or the Caesar? Yeah. What was the Caesar one, Tim?
It might be the Caesar. I sent Mitch the actual paragraph from the book to make sure that I was wording it correctly.
Yeah,
and he gave me the thumbs up.
Yeah, you don't want somebody reading that and then getting bumped right out of the book saying Rapture never brewed that, And
yeah, a Caesar Saison is not a Spaten. I don't even know what these
Caesar
words mean.
spelt Saison. Yeah, that was good. That was really good.
Mitch, look, I get a box of beer. I drink the beer. It's all tasty in different ways.
Mitch tells me you drink this and shut up. He's like, drink it and shut up. You don't say a word.
Right. Right. That's my experience as well.
Yeah, Peter Hunt was asking if there was a bibliography of Philip Fracassi works, and Stephen Dwayne Allison Jr. is going to get a list going on the Fracassi Freaks page, so everybody can know what they need to buy, chase down every single goddamn edition.
Yeah.
You already made it impossible.
I don't think so. Yeah, because there's early stuff. So my first published book ever was published. This is going to drive some people crazy. Was published in an edition of 100, and it was Mother. It was a novelette called Mother, and it was published by Dunham's Manor Press. And he published it in an edition of 100. No, I'm sorry. He published it in an edition of 50 copies, I think.
What?
It was either 50 or 100. And it's this glossy. I have it.
Oh no!
And I have one copy. Before anybody PMs me and asks me, but I had no idea. Obviously, this is it, and it's got a nice blurb here from Laird Barron. It's got a nice blurb down here from Paul Tremblay.
Wow.
And it's a kind
Is it called a novelette?
It says a novelette by Philip Fracassi. And then the trade edition of Mother is this one. So you can sort of see the difference. Ooh. And when I say trade edition, I mean this one's out of print. But this one was published.
Mitch.
Yeah, this one's out of print. But this glossy oversized one was the original. And so I think it was published in an edition of might say here, I think it was 50 or 100, but this was the first thing I ever published. And he sold out of these like in a day. So he doubled the print run, the limited, quote unquote, limited print run. I think it was 50 and they doubled it to 100. And so he sold out of those. And then because there was a lot of interest, so he made a trade edition. And the trade edition is also of the same altar, is sort of the same. So these are my first two. These are my first two publications. But even this one, which is my first publication, had a limited before it. So all that stuff is impossible. These are all like
Well,
non-existent.
I think whoever owns that limited edition of Mother becomes the king of the freaks. And so it's on.
I think Sean Cobble has one, who's in the group. I think he has one. I don't know. It's pretty.
I think you should have the
scary.
addresses of everybody who owns one. It's that intimate.
Yeah. So I printed those things very early, and then I ended up putting them in Behold the Void. But even Behold the Void was a mess because I had the Journal Stone edition, and then the Journal Stone.
I remember Journal Stone. Are they still around?
Yeah, they're still around. So this was the hold on. I try and have these handies for just such an occasion. So this was the original Journal Stone edition, hardcover and paperback. And he and I had a falling out. I'm putting it mildly. And so I switched to Lovecraft Easing, and then Lovecraft Easing did an edition of Behold the Void, which then went out of print. And now the current edition, which is Lethe, is what's available for trade.
Yeah.
But but all these things are just things that happen to a writer, and you just, like I said, I think when we spoke last time, I said a lot of no's suddenly became yeses, and when you're getting yeses after getting years of no's, you just go with it. You run with it. And I just was kind of like, yeah, whatever. That sounds great. Like, you want to publish something of mine? Perfect. I don't care. And I'm not even really being that much more selective now than I was then. Although now I'm focusing more on maybe like novels and long form stuff than I was, than I am short stories. But yeah, so that's what I just showed you was the actual my first actual ever genre publication. The first actual ever publication of my work was this book.
Wow.
So, and this was printed. I printed 1,000 of these. 500 of them burned in a Pennsylvania warehouse fire.
Oh my gosh.
And 500 were sold.
Wow.
So basically there's 500 copies of this book out there.
Wow.
So it's kind of a hard book to find.
Yeah.
And I'm not reprinting it.
That's what I'm saying. Everybody's going to be beating each other up trying to get these books, and it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun.
It's kind of fun. It's fun for the hunt. I think it's, but I'm really, what I like to do. I always really want to have editions available to everybody, and I like to do the limited stuff because I frankly am a book collector and I love a beautiful book that costs a lot of money because it's so crafted so well. And it's got illustrations and all that fun stuff that we love. But I would never want to do a book that did not have a trade edition, because as luck would have it, as I've been so fortunate enough to have gained a small readership of people who would like to read my stuff, a story or a book that I wrote in some form or fashion. So I try to do it. Try to do at least. And even, I guess I tell you now, I hinted at it the other day, but we did that hardcover of Altar that has the Altar, and it has a second story called The Fate of Nero. The Fate of Nero is an 8,000 word sequel to Altar. So The Fate of Nero, I'm actually working on with the publisher's permission and blessing. I'm actually creating a chapbook.
Oh, that's cool.
That will sell as a standalone little, just that story. So people who weren't able to pick up the deluxe Altar will be able to pick up the
that's
read
awesome.
the story.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I think that yes, I think that's a great feeling to make sure that your stuff gets to the most people, like the trade edition of Don't Let Them Get You Down. I'm thrilled that is happening, and I didn't know about it, but because I was getting my limited edition, I was fine with that because it's a 5-star book. But now I'm gonna have to get the trade edition. Somebody just said that Egotist would awesome as a Thunderstorm book, but and then somebody else said as an Earthling book, but Earthling doesn't do second printings, they do first editions. So
yeah, I think Egotist is gonna be what it is.
so it's never gonna exist anywhere else. It's done.
No, I think it's done. Yeah,
Really?
I think Egotist is gonna be what it is. I think just like Happy Holly, I think, which is the book I mentioned about the actress.
Yeah.
I think that's gonna kind of stay on the shelves here at Fracassi headquarters.
Fracassi has moved on, everybody. So
Yeah,
hunt out those Egotists as far and wide as you can. That's it.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be any more printings of the Egotist. I don't think there'll be any printings of Happy Holly. But
were there printings of Happy Holly?
Well, there's this one.
Well, just the one you've done, right?
Yeah, this one. This is the one I've done. So this is the book. And yeah, it's a fun story. It's dark, it's wicked. Actually, so interestingly, when I owned a bookstore in Venice called Equator Books, and I wrote this book, and I bound I think 10 of these, and I gave one to this director who hung out a lot at the bookstore. This guy's name was Peter Berg, who directed Hancock and some other
the Will Smith movie.
Yeah, the Will Smith movie. And he optioned that book, and he loved it. He was gonna make it into a movie. He read the book and he optioned it, and that never happened, as these things go. But yeah, so it's got it's a really dark kind of it's a really dark book, and I just don't know.
I think everybody here is a big fan of really dark. I think those are two good words to sell.
But there's there's dark with a point, and then there's sort of dark where you're just sort of angry, like I mentioned earlier. So you're sort of angry.
Well, we're all angry. Everybody's angry now, 24/7. The whole world is angry.
Right. Maybe I'll send it to a few people, and I don't know. But it's we'll see. It's on the shelf for now. But there's a lot of other books coming out. I mean, Jesus Christ, I can't put in
you have too many
out. Yeah. I can't put anything else in the pile.
I can't imagine the hell it must be to have so many books already written, and then the publisher's like, "Oh, we want the pitch." Oh my god!
I know. So yeah, so the 3 books, Egotist and Don't Let Them Get You Down, and Happy Holly, were all written kind of years ago, as it were, but everything else I've written has been written in the last 3 years. Everything. Well, no, I'm sorry. Since 2015 on. Everything else I've written has been written. So now it's actually 7 years. Time has crept up. But yeah, so things like Child Alone with Strangers, Gothic, all those things were written very recently. So these aren't bottom of the desk drawer novels. These are all novels I've been working on over since 20. I think I started writing Child Alone with Strangers in 2017, and that was my first crack at a genre novel. So I'm kind of glad it's coming out first. And then the other books have all been written since then. So everything else has been pretty recent.
Well, it's great to be here for it and to see it all. I'm not going to chase them all down. I don't go on the secondary market, and that's fine. That's cool. But these are all great reads. They've been wild rides. Some are more fun and lighthearted than others, but no less entertaining. I mean, seriously, it's been amazing.
Yeah. I'm glad you have a trial to look forward to, because I think you've read everything else. So
I got to read Observe. And I really need to read your collections. I haven't read the collections yet. So
yeah, the collections are fun. And like I said, there's that new one I just I'm just on the cusp of making a deal for. I mean, it's done. I just need to sign the contract and stuff. But and then that one's gonna be called No One Is Safe.
Mm,
So I think that one's gonna come out probably end of next year, and
nice.
that's got some really interesting stories in it. So hopefully people like it.
Well, I think they will. I think anybody who's tuned in tonight will. And then this is going to go on YouTube for posterity or whatever the word is, prostate. I don't know. And
Prostatary is the word you're looking for.
It'll be up there. So everybody will be like, wow, when the historians go back and they read Gothic, they'll say, damn, this guy had a lot in the works in
This guy drank a
2022.
lot.
Yeah, and they
He was
drank
younger,
32 ounces. 32
yeah,
ounces.
and
Jeff Word.
it wasn't even, and it wasn't even a chore.
No,
Like
my,
it just evaporated. This thing is empty, and it's just not even. I didn't even notice. It just happened.
I know. And
normally, just for the record, normally I would be drinking a stout with a sidecar of Irish whiskey, to your point,
Okay.
Jameson,
Okay.
or Jack Daniels.
Wow. So just
I normally drink a neat.
Boom.
Yeah, I do a little neat whiskey, and then like a stout is sort of my jam. Typically, it's a Guinness and a Jameson is my sort of modus operandi. So.
I ruined myself for whiskey when I was a young guy. But yes, it created a taste aversion.
I'm not saying Jägermeister. I'm not saying I do shots of Jaeger. I'm saying I do a nice, neat whiskey.
My body goes into survival mode. It says, Jeff, what are you doing? Why are you putting this back in our body? And,
right.
And
we
so
just we had a conversation about this years ago. We all agreed.
Right.
There was
you were
a vote.
About, remember,
right.
You're about 15, 16 and you had issues. All right. Well, we're beyond that now. Now we have pills to manage that.
Well, I didn't go sidecar tonight because I wanted to make sure I was coherent for most of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean that's okay. It's a low bar here. You could be who you are.
Right.
So, Rachel Ann, what did Rachel Ann say? Oh, so there was a question. Your publisher doesn't change your book titles. Do you have to deal with that yet?
I had to pick up Pennywise's
a
balloon.
Dum-Dum. Oh, the balloon.
The balloon. No, the balloon fell when I got one of my books. Pennywise tumbled.
He'll get revenge later.
Sorry, go ahead.
So do you have does your publisher change your book titles?
No. So interestingly, so typically publishers do change book titles. They want short and sweet. They want punchy, which I don't mind. I've been lucky that I haven't had to do that yet. All the titles that I have come up with are the original titles. Although there was, with Child Alone with Strangers, there was early murmurings of shortening it to Alone with Strangers, which, if you've read the book, doesn't make as much sense because so I ended up asking for it to go back to Child Alone with Strangers, which is what they ended up with. But they do often make suggestions. More often, it's, I think, your agent wanting to package your book so it's the most sellable. Yeah, which is their job, and it's so. But yes, those conversations do occur. But for me, I've been lucky so far that I haven't had to change anything. But like the movie I wrote, the Lifetime movie I wrote, which is called Girl Missing, because they changed that title, and that was originally called Find Me. So sometimes in movies you definitely have it's more of a thing, where with books it's a little less common, but they do often change the title.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, they have to sell a product too, so it's a business and it's an art and it's a science in some ways.
I think as long as you're not like really going overboard with the title and more than like a 12-word title or whatever, I think for the most part, I think you get to keep what you present. It's really more of like if it's misrepresenting the book, or if there's another book that sounds similar, or whatever the case might be. But for the most part, you can kind of
Yeah.
Decide what your title was saying.
Well, thank you for being here. It's been 2 hours. 2 hours and 32 ounces and a whole lot of books. I just want to say again, thank you for this book. It was amazing. Loved it. And like I said, I would love nothing more than to hang on to this arc, which you sent to me.
Jesus, dude. Okay, I will send you another arc.
No.
You've been hinting at it the whole conversation. You've been hinting at it the whole conversation.
Dude, there was no agenda. Seriously, no.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Seriously,
Yes,
it would
yes.
break my heart to think you suffered any expense. But I'm going to send it along.
The $5 it cost me to send you another one.
Whatever it was, you should. I loved it. I'm getting the beautiful, pristine one from Zagava. I'm going to send it along to someone I think can appreciate it.
It's very sweet. Yeah, I appreciate that.
And maybe he'll pick up a Zagava copy. I don't know, but yes, definitely don't send me anything.
I'm glad you like the book. It means a lot. It's one of the, I think I've told you this very early on. It's a reach book, right? Where I knew publishing it was going to be going against the norm, as it were, a little bit. I'd had some success as a genre writer, and here I am publishing a book that's not genre. So I'm glad it warms my heart that you.
It was excellent. And and I'm glad a book like that is out there. And I hate to think about the business people crunching the numbers and looking at it as how many people will buy this and how many will, and all that stuff just gets in the way of that story. And it was great. And so I do, if anybody wants to check it out, go read it. And hopefully you're getting some sort of perspective. That's all I can say. But yes, so thank you for being here. I'm going to let everybody go because, the Jeff Word Stouts working its magic. I'm going to start slurring my speech. I'm going to go outside, look for some frogs. That's what I do every night when I let my dog out.
Just don't lick them.
Yeah, no, I try not to, waking up a couple days later in the county holding cell doesn't do well. So
nobody wants that.
No. But look forward to having another chat. Hopefully you can sell this book to someone.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
What the hell? People will catch up. They'll catch up, Philip. They'll catch up.
It'll happen.
With the
Thank you, Jeff.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here, and enjoy the rest of your evening, everybody.